Well, what's up, everyone? Man, we are so honored to be with you here this weekend. My name is Jake, and I have the honor to lead Mission City Church in Santa Barbara, and we are incredibly excited to get up and running. We are so new that we don't even exist yet, okay? So September 16th is our very first Sunday that we will exist as a church. Super pumped about that. Glad you are too. So if you know of anyone in this city, let them know that our brand new church is coming. And we are excited because as we've moved in, we've gotten to know people that desperately need to know who Jesus is and who he says they are and how that changes everything. And because of your generosity and the way years ago you invested in Mission Church in Ventura, they are now investing in us up in Santa Barbara. They're sending dozens of volunteers up to help us get up and running. And then even the way Real Life has financially contributed to our church, it enabled us to throw this event called Free Friday Flicks, and we did it on campus at Santa Barbara City College, where we'll be meeting every Sunday, and we threw a great free party for everyone there in the city, where they got to do bounce houses and face painting and free popcorn, and who doesn't love a free outdoor movie night? And so we had over 250 people there at our last movie night, which was incredible. We're making great connections and can't wait to see this get up and running. So thank you for who you've been as a church for so long. Thank you for the way you've invested in us and encouraged us. And we don't want to say no for you. So if you would like to come and volunteer and help make this thing happen, then you can learn more about it at missioncitysb.com/volunteer. There's all our volunteer opportunities. You can come and help us set up and hang out with kids and serve the coffee and really create a great environment. And so we'll need all the help we can get. I know I'm asking a lot. I know Santa Barbara is like the worst, right? So I know I'm asking a lot, but if you want to come hang out with us, we would love to have you. So check out that website and you can learn more. But today we're starting a brand new series called Weapons of Self-Destruction. And have you ever had that moment in your life where something just happened? It felt like a bomb went off, and you don't know where it came from. There is smoke everywhere. There is destruction everywhere. Your relationships are falling apart. Your career is off the rails. You made a terrible financial investment, whatever it was, and you are just trying to figure out what just happened. And as the smoke is clearing and you're looking at all the debris, you're trying to find the person that was responsible for the explosion in your life, only to realize that you're the one holding the detonator, that you actually self-destructed, that there was something in your world, some behavior or pattern or addiction even, that caused massive destruction in our lives. And that moment can happen to all of us, and we may not even see it coming. And what we believe is that unless we put light on some of these behaviors, unless we expose some of these attitudes, they could cause major damage in our lives. And so what we want to do is just say, let's put some light on these areas of our lives, see what God has to say about them, and then how he wants us to change. And so today we're going to look at our very first weapon of self-destruction, and that's the weapon of pride. Pride. Now, I know that none of you walked in today or tuned in online thinking, you know what? I'm a super arrogant person, you know? Like, I am so full of myself. I have a major pride issue. I know it. I name it. I claim it. That is me. None of us think or talk like that. So I know that you're not proud, but you probably know some proud people, right? Isn't that true? Like, it's not my problem, but let me tell you, here's my list of all the people that do struggle with that. And so when we think about pride, maybe you think about the superstar athlete that beats his chest during the game and speaks in third person at the press conference, right? You're not the proud one, they're the proud one. Or maybe you think about the celebrity that has the house that you wish you lived in, and the car that you wish you drove, and the clothes that you wish you wore. They're proud, they're full of themselves. That's not me. Or maybe you think of the politician with the social media account telling us that they are the greatest thing that God has ever given this country. And we think they have the big head, I don't have the big head. So again, I'm glad we established this. You're not proud, you know proud people. But just in case, all right, just in case, let me ask you just a simple question. I want you to think about the last 7 days of your life, all right? The last 7 days of your life. And let me ask you this question. which human being have you thought about most in the last 7 days? Right? There are like 8 billion people on the world. There are 8 billion people to choose from. Which human being have you thought about most in the last 7 days? Well, I know your answer because I know my answer. You thought about you the most over the last 7 days because I thought about me the most over the last 7 days. In fact, I'm sure you are super awesome. I didn't think about you at all right? I thought about me. I thought about all my problems. I thought about my relationships. I thought about the bills that I have to pay, all right? Like 9 months ago, we moved from the Midwest to the California. Do you know how expensive it is here? Everything's so expensive. Like if you move to Indiana, they just give you stuff for free. Like everything's free there. It's amazing. Everything's so expensive here. I've thought about, does my boss think I'm doing a good job? I thought, is anybody going to show up to this new church? I thought, how did my kids end up this way? I still do not know the answer to that question. I thought about all these things, and I didn't think about your bills or your problems or your kids at all, because I think about me all the time, and you think about you because we are at the center of us. In fact, we even invented a way so that we could tell the world that we're thinking about ourselves. It's a tool called the selfie, all right? Have you ever taken a selfie, ever been a part of a selfie? The selfie is the perfect way of saying, I'm thinking about me, and I want you to think about me while I'm thinking about me, all right? That's really what the selfie is all about. We even have different versions of selfies in our world. There's the gym selfie, right? I'm at the gym, and you're on your couch eating Cheetos. That's what we're trying to communicate. And my favorite ones are the gym selfies that they're not sweating, and they do not know how to use half the machines behind them, but they're at the gym, and they want you to know. Or there was the famous Super Bowl selfie. Do you remember this one from the Super Bowl of halftime show of this last year? There was a kid that ended up next to Justin Timberlake during the halftime show, got a selfie with him, and then immediately started typing something into his phone. Either he was Googling, who is this guy, because he had no idea, or he was trying to come up with a perfect hashtag so everybody could know that he was next to Justin Timberlake. The problem is that he was on a TV program that millions and millions of people were watching. We know, kid, you were next to Justin Timberlake. We saw it all. Or there's the traveling selfie. It's the I'm at an exotic location and you're not, all right? And I would be a hypocrite if I said I haven't participated in this one. This is me in London in front of Buckingham Palace. I wanted you to know that I've been there and you have not, all right? Like that's really what I wanted you to know. The selfie is the perfect way of communicating to you that I'm thinking about me, and I want you to think about me while I'm thinking about me, because I am at the center of my world. Even though there are 8 billion other people in this world, this movie is about me, and the rest of them are supporting characters. And not only do I know some proud people, but I even have some pride in my own world. I am so much about me. And so the question is, if that life and if that attitude and that way of seeing our world, if we really play that out over days and weeks and years and a lifetime, I believe it leads to places that we don't really want to be. And it creates kinds of people that we don't want to be. And so the simple question that we want to ask today is, how should we see ourselves? Just a simple question. In those moments where I'm looking in the mirror, in those very rare moments of quiet and self-reflection where I'm really honest about who I am, how should I see myself? What's a healthy self-esteem? What's a healthy way of understanding if I matter? If my existence is really worth it? How should I have relationships? How should I understand who I am? See, oftentimes in our lives, we believe that there's a way that we want to live our lives, and then there's a way that God wants us to live, and sometimes those are in conflict with one another. And you may have guessed this because you're at a church or you're tuning in online, but we're convinced that when God's way is different than our way, God's way is always better. And so we want to lay out for you kind of what God said about how we should see ourselves. And what God's going to do through a guy named Paul is explain a way to understand who we are and whether we matter or not that is so far off most of our maps. It's so different than the way most of us have lived our lives that if we would give it a shot, it might change everything. And so if you have a Bible or a Bible app, I'd love for you to join me. It's this book of the Bible called 1 Corinthians. That's where we're going to be hanging out today, and we're going to be in chapter 3. And the reason that we turn to the Bible to answer some of these big life questions is that we're convinced that the Bible is how God chose to reveal himself to you and to me. He's a God that wanted to be known. He's a God that had something to say about our world and why it matters and who we really are to him. And so it's amazing that God even had people write it down so that you and I could interact with it so many years later. And that's what we're going to see through a guy named Paul. And what he's doing is he's writing a letter to an early church, one of the first churches that ever existed. There's this church in a town called Corinth, and that's why it's called Corinthians. And at that moment, there was a fight going on in the church in Corinth. All right? Now, maybe you're new to church and you're surprised to hear people fight while they're in church. And then maybe you've been to church for like 5 minutes and you found out really fast. People fight in church sometimes. And so there was this fight. And there were these two groups of people. The first group said, you know what? We are team Paul. So we knew Paul, he was our leader, he trained us, he encouraged us, he empowered us to lead. And because we knew Paul and he knew us, that makes us more qualified to lead the church than anyone else. Then there was another group of people in the same church that said, no, we're team Apollos. See, Apollos was another highly gifted communicator that led the church. And they said, because we knew Apollos, and he trained us, and he loved us, and he encouraged us, then we are more qualified than the rest of you to lead this church. So there was Team Paul, and they had T-shirts with the letter P on it, and they said, we're Team Paul. And then there was another one that had Team Apollos T-shirts, and they said, no, we're better than you. And this fight went back and forth. And Paul is going to address this debate that was going on in the church. He's going to settle it once and for all. And then again, he's going to lay out a way for us to see ourselves that will be radically different than the way most of us have ever lived and could really change our lives. So look with me, 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Here's how Paul addressed this issue. He said, so don't boast about following a particular human leader. For everything belongs to you, whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future. Everything belongs to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. So don't make judgments about anyone ahead of time before the Lord returns. For he will bring our darkest secrets to light and will reveal our private motives. Then God will give to each one whatever praise is due. For what gives you the right to make such a judgment? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift? So Paul comes in and he says, okay, you guys are fighting about which person is better. Team Paul, Team Apollos, which one is more qualified to lead? And Paul shuts it down by saying, stop it. Stop arguing, stop boasting. It does not matter which team you are on because Paul and Apollos are on the same team. They're building the same church. They're following the same Jesus. They are aiming at the same target. Why are you trying to be divisive? It'd be like if you were a Warriors fan and you were arguing over which one you were on, Team Steph Curry or Team Kevin Durant. They're on the same team. It does not matter. I'm pretty sure Paul knew who the Golden State Warriors were 2,000 years ago, all right? I'm pretty sure that was accurate. And so he's saying, look, this argument doesn't help anybody. You have to shut it down. And this is the crazy thing about pride. See, what pride, in the way we can understand it best, is maybe being like an overinflated ego. It's when we start filling our lives and filling the way that we see ourselves with things that don't really matter and won't really last. We try to fill ourselves with accomplishments or possessions or achievements that we can feel good about ourselves, and we puff ourselves up, but only to find out that those things didn't really matter after all. So you could think about it kind of like this balloon. Often what we do in our lives is we look around at other people that may not have what we have, maybe haven't accomplished what we've accomplished, maybe aren't the kind of person that we are, and we compare ourselves to them, and then we get puffed up. And so we look around the office and we say, you know what? I am far more qualified, I'm far more talented, and I am far more trained than that guy in the cubicle over there. And so we puff ourselves up. And then we look at our marriage and we think, you know what? We are so in love. And we are so close, and we are better than we have ever been before. And did you hear about the couple down the street? They're splitting up. I never thought that we would see that. I feel so good about us, and we get puffed up. And we look at our kids, and they seem so well behaved, and they seem so obedient, and they seem so loving. And then we go to one of those restaurants, and we see one of those young families with young kids, and their kids are just having a meltdown, and they're like throwing forks and ketchup bottles, and we just think to ourselves, our kids would never. And then we buy the thing that not everybody else can buy, and we move into the neighborhood not everyone else can afford. And then maybe we even show up to a place like this and we think, man, I just love being here. I'm so connected to God. I feel so close to Him. And I just feel sorry for those people that don't. You look at their families, you look at their careers, you look at their addictions and their hang-ups, and you think, I'm so glad I'm not them. And it gets to this place where we are getting filled and filled and filled, and we are stretching the boundaries of any place that we should ever be. And we're threatening to explode. And this is the classic view of pride right here. It's this word called superiority. It's when I play the game to where I look around in my life and see other people. I see that I have what they don't. I see that I've achieved what they can't. I see that I am what they will never be. And if you wouldn't classify yourself as a proud person, maybe you wouldn't own feeling superior to other people, let me just do a little evaluation with you. How often do you ask questions like this? How could they? That's the classic question that we ask when we start feeling better than other people is, how could they? I mean, how could they think that way? How could they vote for that candidate? How could they make that financial decision? How could they let their kids do those things? How could they live a life other than the way I live my life? My life is so good. How could they be any different? And we start becoming so convinced of our goodness that we start judging other people's badness. And we become so convinced of our rightness that we feel morally obligated to expose other people's wrongness. And we fill ourselves to the brink of popping with things that could easily go away. You see, there's another side to pride. It's not just always feeling better than ourselves, because the danger with filling our lives with things that could easily go away is that they often do. The very things that we used to depend on to tell us that we were doing okay, they can disappear. In fact, we start feeling inferior, feel that feeling of inferiority. And so that same coworker across the cubicle that had nothing to offer, well, they got the promotion and I didn't. And it deflates us. And all of a sudden, that marriage that used to come so naturally, it used to be so romantic, it used to be so easy, now it's just hard. We fight all the time, and we disagree about so much, and everyone else seems happier than we are. And now my kids that I thought were so on track, they're saying things that they never used to say, and they're posting things I never thought I would see, and they're making decisions I never thought they would make. And then we show up to a place like this, and we can't remember the last time that we had a meaningful connection with God. Can't remember the last time that we prayed and actually felt like He was listening, the last time that we sang and we actually meant what we were singing, the last time we ever wanted to be generous with our time or our resources, and we're deflated. And there's a lot of us. I walked in here today, as we're sitting around watching this right now, and this is what it feels like. Feel empty, feel discouraged, because the very things that used to tell us that we were okay now are no longer present in our lives, and we don't know where to turn. We don't know who to turn to tell us whether we matter, whether we're important, whether anyone loves us, because those things are now gone. We feel empty and we feel discouraged. In fact, Madonna, in an interview with Vogue magazine, put it just about as perfectly as anyone I could find. And for those of you under the age of 30, Madonna was a musical artist, all right, someone that was very famous at one time. And And she put it like this. See if this sounds familiar. My drive in life comes from a fear of being mediocre. That is always pushing me. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being. But then I feel I am still mediocre and uninteresting unless I do something else. Because even though I have become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. My struggle has never ended, and I guess it never will. Even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Madonna is one of the most successful women in the music industry. Her estimated net worth is between $600 and $800 million. She sold over 300 million records and has had 12 #1 hits, and it is not enough. Even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. It's never, ever going to fill us. It's never going to last. And so if the way that we've been living right now, to puff ourselves up through the comparison game, to compare ourselves to other people to feel better than them, if that's not going to work, then what is it? And we've actually already heard Paul's answer, and we're going to read it again in verses 3 through 4. And again, this is the part where Paul's going to lay out a way of seeing himself that most of us have never considered, we've never tried, and most of it is why we feel so empty and so discouraged. Watch how Paul said he understands himself. In verse 3, he said, "As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide." So Paul is putting it out here for us, and he's saying, look, the way you've been doing it, it's not going to work. The way you understand yourself is going to leave you empty. There's another way of doing it. And so Paul, first of all, says this. He says, what you think about me is not most important. When it comes to the way I see myself, when it comes to my identity and my self-worth and my value, what you think about me is not most important. Now, could you imagine a life where you got to say that? With the opinions of other people no longer determine whether I have a good day or a bad day. The opinions of other people no longer tell me whether I matter at all. I mean, students, imagine here as you go back to school that the opinions of your classmates, your level of popularity is no longer the most important thing about you. The number of likes that you get on your Instagram post does not matter to you because it's not the most important thing. As you walk into your office this next week, the opinions of your coworkers, the opinions of your boss, they are not the most important thing. The opinions of your own mother, even though I'm sure she is lovely, is no longer the most important thing. Paul is saying, what you think about me is not most important. And so right now at all the campuses, here's what I want you to do. When I count to 3, I want you to turn to the person next to you. And just so you can hear yourself say it, I want you to say, what you think about me is not most important. All right? You ready? Turn to the person next to you. At the count of 3, you say it to them. 1, 2, 3, go. All right. Doesn't that feel good? It's like therapeutic. Some of you were a little too aggressive in the way you said it, all right? You just need to you need to chill out a little bit, okay? Just imagine a life to where no longer do the opinions of other people define who I am. The way they feel about me is no longer the most important thing. That sounds good. I think I can get on board with that. But Paul didn't stop right there. He actually added a layer. And this is a layer that's going to be a little more challenging for us. He said, what I think about me is no longer most important. And this is where Paul and our culture and Paul and our world diverge a little bit. You see, what he's saying is that when I stare in the mirror and when I really look at myself, my own opinion of myself is not the most important thing. My self-esteem, the way I understand who I am, it's not the most important. And really, in our culture, what we're told is that if you want to live your best life, and if you want to have a better life, then you just need to believe in yourself. You just need to really believe in who you are and what you would accomplish, and it'll make you feel better. It's some real R. Kelly, Space Jam, I believe I can fly stuff, right? If I can believe it, I can do it, that's what's going to happen. But the problem is that if I am the one that determines the standards in my life, if I'm the one that determines whether I'm worth something, then one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to set the standard so high for myself that I'll never be able to accomplish it, and then I'll leave feeling more depressed than ever. Or I'll lower the standard so low that anybody could hit it, but then I'm the kind of person with low standards, and I don't want to be that either. See, I cannot be trusted to tell myself whether I matter or not. I am not the most important lens in my life. So I want you to say that again, and I'm going to count to 3. You don't have to turn to the person next to you. I just want you to say it out loud so you can hear yourself say it, all right? Well, I'm going to count to 3, and you're going to say, what I think about me is not most important. You ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, now some of you didn't believe that. All right, you said it, you didn't believe that. You were into the first one, you liked yelling at people, you don't like that one. So we're gonna try it again. I want you to convince me. Are you ready? All right, I'm gonna say it again. What I think about me is not most important. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. There you go. Some of you said it and you just tell your face next time, all right? You still don't believe it, okay? But here's the deal. What you think about me is not most important. What I think about me is not most important. Then who's left? Who's going to be the one that's going to tell me whether I matter? Who's going to be the one that tells me that I have value? Well, Paul's saying it's what God thinks about me is the most important. And here's the beautiful thing about our God, is that he so desperately wanted us to know this that he wrote it down for us. And he made it incredibly clear so that we could understand it and live our lives accordingly. In fact, in another book of the Bible, that same guy, Paul, he wrote it like this in Romans chapter 8. He said, so now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus. One more time. So now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus. See, the picture that Paul is painting here is that many of us have walked through our lives every single day as if we are on trial. And the issue that's being tried is whether we matter or not. It's whether we have any value. It's whether our existence was worth it. And it feels like many of us are living in this courtroom to where there's a prosecutor on the other side of the courtroom just shouting us down with every mistake that we've made, every relationship that we've failed, every poor financial investment, every sin that we have committed. That prosecutor is yelling at us, and they have a lot of material. And every day we feel like we have to wake up and defend ourselves to show people that we really matter, to show people that we are worth something. I gotta prove myself. I have to prove myself to all my high school classmates on Facebook that I actually did something. I gotta prove myself to my ex who said I would never amount to anything. I got to prove myself to my dad that I never even knew. I'm walking through life always trying to defend myself to people that I don't even know and don't even love and don't even care about, but I am always on trial. And Paul's coming along and saying, you are not on trial anymore. The verdict is in. Jesus said you are not guilty. See, what Jesus did is he came and lived the perfect life that you and I were supposed to live, but we never could. And then he went to the cross to die the death. We deserved to die for our sin, but we couldn't pay that. He did. And then in turn, he gave us the reward that only he could earn, which was being made right with God. Jesus did it all for us. We are not on trial. We are not guilty. Jesus freed us. And now our lives are forever changed. So it's not what you think about me, and it's not even what I think about me. It's what God thinks about me. And he says I'm not guilty. And on top of that, he says he loves me. He says every single one of us are much loved sons and daughters of his, and that changes everything. You see, the key to battling pride is not thinking less of ourselves. Often that's what we try to do, either to ourselves or to other people. We just say, you know what, they need to be taken down a few notches. We just need to kind of get the swelling down in their heads. We just need them to think less of themselves. And so we bring up that really our accomplishments aren't all that great, and really there's other people that have done more than us, and we try to depress ourselves into humility, and that just doesn't work. See, the key to battling pride is not thinking less of ourselves. It's simply thinking of ourselves less. See, when I understand what Jesus has done for me, when I understand who he is and who he says I am, then no longer do I have to prove anything to anyone. I don't have to prove anything to my coworkers, my boss, my neighbors, my classmates, even my own parents. I don't have to prove anything because Jesus already told me who I am. And so now I get to live a life that's a life of self-forgetfulness. Doesn't that sound amazing? To where no longer do I have to think about me all the time. So just imagine this. I get to now have conversations where I'm not at the center of it. There are some of us that have gone decades without having a single conversation where we didn't interject ourselves right into the middle of it because we wanted people thinking about us. You don't have to do that anymore. Jesus already told you who you are. We get to show up to work, and now instead of taking and trying to get from people, we can be givers because our identity isn't in what we produce. Our identity is in who Jesus said we are. We get to develop relationships to where I'm not worried about what they're going to give me and if they'll ever pay me back. I can give away because Jesus did. And he took care of everything. And he told me who I was once and for all. See, this life is so different than the way many of us have lived. It's so far off our map, but if we would just consider it, that maybe God is who he says he is, and that he did what he said he did, and he will continue doing that forever and ever, that he told us who we are, and that's all we ever need, then we can put down the weapon of self-destruction that is pride, live a life of humility, and it is the best life that we can live. So right now, I just want to pray for everyone at all of our campuses that we would have the courage to lay down the weapon of pride, that we would have the courage of laying down that question, what about me? Who's going to take care of me? What about mine? And finally, we can live the life of peace and humility that only Jesus provides. So will you pray with me? Father, we are so grateful, grateful for your Son, grateful for your love. We're grateful for your word where you revealed who you are and who we are because of it. Right now, I want to pray for those of us that are struggling in who we are because maybe we don't have enough people pouring into us. Maybe we grew up without ever being loved on and encouraged and supported, and so we've just been drifting through this life trying to figure this out on our own. We've been trying to prove ourselves to people that aren't even around anymore, or we don't even know. God, I pray that we'll put that down. No longer are we responsible for proving anything. No longer are we responsible for claiming anything because you've given it all to us. I pray that that gift of grace, if we've known it for a long time, that doesn't grow old, but that good news is fresh in our minds tonight. I pray that if this is the first time that we've ever heard this good news, that we receive it with all humility and it changes who we are from the inside out. God, if there's any spot in our lives where we feel really good about ourselves because we have stuff that other people don't, that we will ask for your forgiveness, that we will change the way that we think. God, you have access to our hearts. You can rewire us the way you need us to be. And it's in your good name I pray. Amen.